Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Marc. I'm a product designer, co-founder and CEO of Slash, and a highly sensitive person. In 2016, I experienced my first burnout and it changed my life. Human psychology became a passion. In the world of digital innovations, this topic is often overlooked. We create products to answer problems or needs, but we don't necessarily ask ourselves how it will impact people's lives. Living with Technology is a podcast where I speak to psychologists, therapists, neuroscientists, coaches, mentors who work with highly sensitive people. Understanding how they experience technology becomes essential for us digital makers to build a technology that is both amazing and responsible. Today we have Dr. Sally Conway with us, all the way from the UK. Sally is a clinical psychologist with a doctorate in clinical psychology and a wealth of experience in mental health care. She's the founder of Highly Sensitive Psychologist and specializes in various therapeutic techniques. Hello, Sally, and welcome. Welcome to Living with Technology. To get started with this conversation and for our audience to get to know you, perhaps could you start by sharing your definition of highly sensitive people, also referred to as HSPs?
Yeah, sure. So, just quite simply, highly sensitive people are born with an innate trait, which means they feel, think, and experience their environment more deeply than other people around them. So this also means that they can be more empathic, more intuitive, more creative. There are kind of 4 traits that are known within the highly sensitive person, which are depth of processing. So this means people think more deeply about things, so it takes them longer to process information. They get overstimulated more easily. So what this can mean is when there's too much information coming into them, when they've got lots of tasks to do, when they're in a busy environment, they get really kind of overwhelmed quite quickly and need a bit of downtime to kind of relax and recharge their nervous system. The third trait is emotional sensitivity. So this is where they feel everything more intensely. So this is where kind of they might be more likely to cry at sad things or laugh at happy things. So everything is just a bit more intense emotionally. And then the final one is sensory sensitivity. So this is where everything in their environment is felt, kind of subtleties in their environment are really picked up on. So for instance, sounds, smells, noises. They can be more sensitive to medication, for example. But also this can make them really more responsive to nature, to the arts. So that it can be difficult being highly sensitive because you're how should we say it? Sorry, I've forgotten. Having a mind blank. Your nervous system can be more reactive than other people. So it can be tricky because you're more reactive to stressful life events, but also we have the benefit of being more responsive to all the positive things that life has to offer. We can experience more joy, more excitement, more love. That's quite a long explanation. Sorry.
Can I explore on the last part, the sensory, and perhaps when it comes to you, is there a sensory aspect of you that you feel more active than the other people around you that might not be HSPs?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually, because I think every highly sensitive person is different, so they differ along how much they experience each of the traits. I am definitely more of the empathic kind. I pick up on people's feelings just from looking at their faces or just from seeing how they're sitting, how they're holding themselves. Not so much the sensory processing, although quite sensitive to smells. But it's mainly kind of feeling intense emotions and picking up on other people's emotions that are quite strong for me.
Okay, thank you. Do you maybe for our audience who are non HSPs, do you have a famous person in mind that you would qualify as HSPs for them to see, to refer to someone they might know?
Yeah, there is actually a movie out. I don't know if you've seen it. I haven't seen it myself yet, but it's called Sensitive, the documentary. It's been out for a few years, and Alanis Morissette stars in that movie because she's a highly sensitive person. There's also, I think, Nicole Kidman, the think is highly sensitive. Princess Diana used to be highly sensitive. Martin Luther King, I think, is another one that's talked about. So even these people who are in really great leadership kind of positions, I think there's something about that sensitivity that really helps them to excel in those roles.
Nice. New people for our audience. This morning, the person mentioned Barack Obama as a highly sensitive.
Yes, that's another more recent one. Yeah.
Also, yeah. Very interesting. Yes. Thank you. All right, let's dive a bit more into the topic. So the first time we talked, you mentioned something I would like to you to explain a bit here in this conversation is the tendency for highly sensitive people to self-sacrifice. So it looks like a very strong and powerful concept with the word sacrifice in it, but yeah, perhaps it is, and indeed is a big part of HSP. So can you help us understand better why, if you have answers to that, and how does it manifest?
Yeah, sure. So self-sacrifice is present in lots of people. It simply means that you put other people's needs before your own. And lots of people do that, and that can be a great quality. But when it's at the detriment of your own well-being, it can become a problem. And for people who maybe have had trauma in the background, adverse life experiences, particularly women who have traditionally taken on the caretaker roles, this tendency to be guided by kind of societal norms and expectations and to feel like they've got to kind of please others and be that kind of person is really strong. And because highly sensitive people feel everything more strongly and they suffer from kind of adverse events more strongly, then it follows that they're also more likely to rely on this kind of strategy of pleasing others. The other thing is that they're more empathic, so they pick up more on how other people are feeling. So one of the things people who self-sacrifice do is they find it hard to say no. They find it hard to express their own needs. So highly sensitive people, when they kind of feel that empathy of the other person, they really don't want to disappoint them. They really don't want to let them down. So they go along with things much more easily to avoid that kind of feeling that they've let people down, feeling that guilt, feeling kind of overwhelmed by that decision. And also their need to feel more accepted. So lots of highly sensitive people kind of have always felt different and not like they don't fit in to their groups. So they try even harder to do things that will make themselves be liked, be accepted, to feel like they belong to groups. So that can include doing things that maybe they wouldn't naturally do, that wouldn't be in line with their values, but they think that will help them to fit in a bit more. So, yeah.
And it's a great introduction to today's topic, because we're going to talk about authenticity as a concept and as a quest for, because it is a quest for highly sensitive people to get to a point where we feel that we are. I say we because I myself qualify also as a highly sensitive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is quite a journey to first understand ourselves and then be ourselves. Yeah, we tend to accept others to be themselves and kind of fit well in their environments rather than be ourselves and have other people adapt to the environment we're creating around us. So yeah, I understand this. Can I challenge you just for a second on one thing you said, which was it applies a bit more to women. Is it something you've experienced, or is there an explanation behind it?
Yeah, so it's kind of those traditional gender roles, really, that women stay at home and they look after the children and they look after the house. Those traditional roles haven't gone away, and even though women are in the workplace now, they're still doing the majority of those roles, because there's that sense of this is what's expected of us. There's almost that hidden pressure from their cultures, from their societies, and from what they've learned from the people growing up when they were growing up. So their mothers, my mother particularly, was a huge self-sacrificer. She did everything. And you take that in as a child, and you see those kind of messages, or this is what you have to do as a woman. Obviously, I know I'm speaking to you today, so I don't know. I know when we talked before, you kind of mentioned that was something you were familiar with. So I know there are men who get this too, but traditionally it's that kind of pressure on women to be in those roles, and it's harder for us to kind of step out of that because it's not what society expects from us.
Thank you for the answer. I know it's a difficult question, because I appreciate your insights. Let's dive a bit then in a bit more in this quest for authenticity. Why would you say it is more difficult for highly sensitive people to be authentic?
So, like I kind of have maybe alluded to already, highly sensitive people often grow up thinking that there's something wrong with them. They can get messages from their parents that their sensitivity is too much. The parents, particularly, who might not know how to handle that. They can get messages from their teachers that they're not confident enough, they don't speak up enough in class. And those messages kind of form how we see ourselves as highly sensitive people, that essentially there's a part of us that isn't right. We're told that we can't express our sensitivity, we can't be quiet, we can't be the things we like to be. So we learn how to fit in by kind of masking some of those sensitivities, by trying to be like the other people around us. And that's where that kind of authenticity feels really, really difficult, because then when you realise you're highly sensitive, when you realise kind of all the ways that you've been over the years because of that, it's almost like you've got to re-own yourself and say, actually, this is me, and I'm not afraid to kind of say I'm sensitive. It's a strength, not a weakness. But for a lot of people, making that transition is difficult, because it's just not something that they're used to.
I've read this weekend actually that it was also just to jump on what you say, because the cultural context is very important in that. Is if it is acceptable to be highly sensitive in our culture, then highly sensitive people would have no problem being themselves, versus perhaps in our culture. I mean, I'm here from the UK, I'm from France. I don't know how we can call this culture besides perhaps Western culture. But I've read that in some other countries, especially I think it was China, Korea, some other Southeast Asian countries, it was easier to be to feel confident and be.
I've seen that. Yeah, so they kind of celebrate the quieter strengths when they're at school. So you can imagine the impact that has on. It's okay to be me. It's okay to see the strengths in my nature. I don't know any kind of data around that, but I'm sure it'd be fascinating research to compare the kind of the attitudes of higher sensitivity in Eastern and Western kind of societies, if we can split it up that broadly. But yeah, there's definitely something about how your society views that trait.
Mm-hmm. So, and how has it been for you? So you're a psychologist and highly sensitive person. Can you perhaps tell us a bit about your journey as defining yourself and displaying it as this is it, this is me?
So, I mean, it's only quite recently, in the last year or so, that I've come to understand this trait within myself. But before then, I've always been searching for answers, I suppose, without maybe even knowing it. And I think that's probably what drew me into psychology, to learn more about human nature, human behaviour. But even through all those years of studying, the trait of high sensitivity was not covered. So I was still kind of in the dark with that until, like I say, the last year or so. I've always known I was sensitive and an introvert, which I think 70% of highly sensitive people are introverts as well. But the actual trait of high sensitivity, just finding out about that was kind of blew me away a little bit. I was like, wow, this is me, and finally I understand, and finally I kind of can find my people, and then I kind of dived into learning everything I could about it, and watching podcasts and joining communities and connecting with other HSPs, and that was just so kind of validating for me, because when I first spoke about it actually in a group of other psychologists, I kind of just added it on at the end. We were describing what we wanted for our practices, and I said, yeah, and I'm sensitive and introvert. And the shame that I felt in saying that was just, wow, that was strong. I didn't realise I held so much shame about the trait. So for me, then it was, right, I gotta figure this out, and I gotta own this and learn about it. So that's been what my last year has been about, really, and it's been really just exciting and eye-opening and tiring as well, because I've got to balance those kind of energies. But it's a great journey when you decide, when you own it and learn to kind of celebrate the strengths of it.
It's amazing to hear those words for a highly sensitive person like myself. To the amount of labels that we put on ourselves is being like you were saying, being ashamed of being an introvert. Why is that? It's totally okay. I mean, not wanting to put any judgment here, but it's we have such a cultural, such a strong cultural bias for a certain type of people, that if we are not like that, if we don't fit in, then there's a reason to be shameful or ashamed of ourselves.
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
this is very strong, and I can relate to that also. I'm sure people listening will be relating. Thank you so much for for sharing about your journey. If we let's take a bit of a technology direction to this conversation, because ultimately this podcast is about how highly sensitive people cope with technology, and in this case, obviously our when it comes to authenticity, our things like social media and things like this come to mind, but also our social presence when we, like yourself, a psychologist that wants to help and have an impact on certain people, then the online experiences becomes important. So how has it been so far for you, that experience of putting yourself online? Was it first an important part of your journey, and if it was, how hard was it?
Yeah, so it's been quite a steep learning curve, shall we say. I think, so I started off with my I used to work in the National Health Service in the UK, and then I kind of left to start off my private practice. And, I was seeing kind of lots of different people, and that was okay. I was getting them through third-party referrals. But then this is another thing highly sensitive people have. It's that need for a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in their life. And what I was doing, it was good. I was helping people, but I just felt like there was more that I needed to do. And I felt that was about the kinds of people I was seeing. And I wanted to work with people that really I resonated with. So I couldn't just sit there and expect them to come to me. I had to kind of go out there and put myself out there and let them know what I was all about. So visibility, it's kind of a two-edged sword, really. It's hard sometimes. It can be overwhelming, being out there and being vulnerable and being kind of authentic. But I think it's necessary to be found, and I think to share that you are putting yourself out there in an authentic way really frees people up to do the same. That was one of the first things, or one of the first podcasts I listened to, that two wonderful ladies were talking about that. Once you give yourself the permission to be vulnerable, you're giving other people the permission to be vulnerable too. So I've always really held that to heart and think about that when it is feeling difficult to show. And the other thing I think also is highly sensitive people will know when you're not being authentic. So there's no point kind of showing up and just pretending to be something you're not, because they'll see right through that. It might not be straight away, but they will, and that's not kind of the relationship you want to set up with people. And also you want to draw the right people to you. So you want to draw authentic people to you who genuinely kind of want your services. So it's a no-brainer, really. You've got to be authentic to get the right kind of the work that you want, the work that kind of speaks to you and fulfills you and gives you that mission and purpose. Yeah.
Have you had that experience where you were putting yourself online and you felt like you had to read again and again to make sure that was really you, or that was like, were you worried that people would think of you as different as you are? How, without using the word, but how paranoid are we when we, as HSPs, we put ourselves online and want to make sure we are not misunderstood?
Yeah, I think that does come into a little bit, but that's probably the kind of the perfectionistic traits that we have as well. That we've got to get everything right to the detail. And really thinking about how your message is hitting as well. It's a sensitive subject matter. You don't want to offend people. You don't want to kind of exclude people. But for me, I want to help share that message that we have strengths and we need to use them to help make the world a better place, really. It's quite a wide goal, but I think we've got so much to bring if we're just allowed, or if we allow ourselves to bring those things into play. So yeah, I think it's fine to be a little bit vulnerable. It's human, isn't it?
I can't help but noticing in the past, since we got in touch, that you're quite active on LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken. How has it gone so far? Are you enjoying it? Is it hard?
I like to think that it's coming across that I'm enjoying it, because I wouldn't be showing up so much if it didn't mean so much to me. I've been on LinkedIn a few years now, but it's only since I've really got this kind of bit between my teeth, and it's like, this is me, this is what I'm meant to be doing. I just feel so inspired all the time. I read around a lot. I watch lots of kind of videos, attend conferences, and I just want to share all of that with people. So I hope that comes through. Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't be showing up so much if it wasn't for that kind of passion for what I'm doing for that, because it really sits with my values and what I want to to be doing in the world. It's exhausting though, yeah, and I do have to be very careful to kind of practice what I preach really and manage my own energy, because I can get too engrossed in it and I can get too carried away and I can spend hours doing posts and thinking about the next one, and yeah.
Exactly. And then people comment and you have to answer comments, and then they message back, and then you have to message again. It's I don't know if you feel that, but maybe there might be also a fear of having to catch up and follow up with everyone.
Yeah, at the moment it's manageable because I don't have loads of followers or anything, but I can see how in time, that might become a problem. But again, for me, I think it's really important that if somebody takes the time to comment on your posts, that you see them, that you hear them, and that you respond to them. We had an interesting conversation recently about, when do you get somebody in to help you with that stuff, and how can you kind of maintain an authentic voice if somebody else is kind of putting together your posts and putting them out there. So that's something to possibly navigate in the future. But I think as long as you're having those conversations with those people and they're getting that essence of you, then that might be okay. But I'm not there yet, so cross that bridge.
Thank you for sharing. LinkedIn itself is a community, but there are also other communities. So let's look at that, and we discussed about it a bit last time we talked about the importance of belonging to a community. So still, perhaps let's start with your experience. How has it been for you to be part of a community? How has it helped you? And do you have some specific examples of some connections you've made with those communities that have been very beneficial?
Yeah, lots of examples, really. I think maybe this is another kind of trait of highly sensitive people. Well, actually, it is, because they've evolved to be more cautious ones and to kind of test out the ground before maybe you jump ahead. So for me, initially, I was just kind of cautiously dipping my toe in, following conversations, just seeing what was out there, and then starting to comment on a few things. But the response, I suppose, that you get back, the highly sensitive community, they're so welcoming. I've experienced so far anyway. They're so welcoming, they're so supportive, they're so nurturing. You just feel almost like you've come home. These are your people. And I think, I've been talking to you today, talking last time, we enjoy those deeper conversations, which you can't always get in your everyday life unless you have some highly sensitive friends or other people that you kind of get that from. But I think that's where the communities online can really, really help, because we don't have access to that many. Well, I don't particularly have access to a lot of people in my life, so the online world has really opened that up to me for communities, and I've joined a couple of different ones. I've been on a course as well where I really connected with. Wow, for the first time, I was me. I was vulnerable. I opened up, and I felt truly heard and seen. And there's nothing more powerful, I think, than being vulnerable and knowing that you're doing it in a safe place and that you're going to be accepted. It's so kind of validating. What has come from that? I guess so many connections of just the work that you want to do. People saying, "Yeah, I'd love to be a part of this group," or "That sounds like a really great thing to do." I've had a recommendation from a lovely lady who I worked with in the coaching course. Things, they're just more willing to put themselves out there and help you and support you, I think. So, yeah, if you're not already in a HSP community and you think you might be highly sensitive, I would absolutely recommend finding one that suits you, that fits with you. I think the hard thing is, because we are so spread across the world, is getting the times when we can all meet together sometimes. But yeah, I'm thinking myself of some way that I might be able to offer something, but I haven't quite figured out what that might be yet. But I think the magic happens when we get together.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. 100% agree. Thanks to the online tools that are and online communities that exist, I was able to reach out to you, and we had the first conversations. I hope we'll have more, and this was so beneficial, and I got I'm very grateful that I made this move to also talk about this, because maybe it's going to help highly sensitive people, but at least definitely it's helping me a lot.
Exactly. So we wouldn't be sat here today if it wasn't for the online community.
Yeah, that's the for me one of the beauties of the online tools to find people and resources to understand ourselves and to feel good. So thanks for sharing. Perhaps now on the it's going to be a bit of a broad question, but it's the last one also, so take your time. The social experience, I call it social experience online, but I'm referring to mostly social media, with how they work and what they offer. Based on your experience working with highly sensitive people, your own experience, and perhaps just your opinions, what are some of the advice you can give to highly sensitive people to make the best use of the online social experience, and perhaps what to avoid, some things not to do. It's probably better,
yeah.
But at least perhaps at the beginning, how to make the best use of it, and some of things just better not to do.
Yeah, okay. So perhaps I might have touched on some of this already, but things like finding your space. So I would generally recommend limiting the amount of platforms that you're on. I used to be on Instagram, but that just felt too busy, too overcrowded, too chaotic for me. So I stick with the place where I feel safest, which is LinkedIn, funnily enough. And that's what I would recommend other people do. Find the platform that you're most comfortable with. Find the groups where you feel safest and use those to your advantage. I think if you're putting things out there as well, if you need to be out there, if your business means that you need to be online, really think about your messaging. Think about, you don't want to overwhelm people. You don't want to... There's a lot of advice around marketing about access their pain points, but I think you've got to be really careful about doing that with highly sensitive people particularly, because that can just shut them off completely if they're too stimulated by that, if their emotions are too triggered by that. So just be careful of your messaging. Think about whether you would want to receive that message. If you're worried about how you're going to be perceived, you can always kind of turn off comments if you're putting posts and things out there. Because of our tendency to feel more and to be more empathic, we also kind of can be more susceptible to criticism. So we can really think deeply about some of those comments that we get and think about what that says about us. So you really want to kind of protect yourself against those things. Be authentic. I think we've already covered that, but try and be yourself. Be respectful. Try not to share too much. I think sometimes we have a tendency to just, when we find our tribe, it's like, it all comes out. But moderation is key. So this might be some of the things to avoid. Just take it slowly, because then you can feel really vulnerable afterwards if you don't. So self-care is a must, really. Regular breaks, limiting your time online, and comparing yourself is another massive one. Try not to compare yourself with others. Hopefully this is well known, but people only present their best versions generally online. That's why I always love it when I find a post where somebody's been genuinely kind of vulnerable or authentic, and it's like they're showing the real them. So try not to get into that kind of comparing yourself. And if you notice that, just checking in with yourself. How am I feeling in this? Am I kind of is it affecting my mood? Am I feeling more down? Am I starting to feel anxious? When those things are happening, it's time to take a break. So I think the key message is make sure what you're doing is you're achieving what you need to, or you're getting some value from your interactions online versus managing your energy in terms of that, which you might resonate with you today because you've had a busy day.
Clearly, yeah, I see there's in your answer, and there is and I start to see a pattern amongst the conversations that I have is HSPs, even more than others, need to put some intention into their into what they do, especially online, because it looks like a nice place. It's easy to join.
It's so easy. Yeah, that's another great one actually. Have a clear intention, and then after a few minutes, check back in with that intention. Are you doing the thing you came online to do? I do that all the time. Certain platforms are worse than others for that, I think. But Facebook for me particularly, I'll go on to check out one thing in one group, and before I know it, I'm way down the line somewhere else. So keep bringing yourself back. Remind yourself, what did you go on there for? And maybe give yourself some time limits for how long you're going to spend doing that particular task. And I think there's some great apps and software out there that you can do that with as well. Setting your little time schedules, task managers, all those kinds of things.
It would be great if you would go into a Facebook, and before you enter Facebook, they ask you, what are you coming to do? And then they'll make sure you just come for that and don't do anything else but what you're coming to do.
That would be brilliant. Yeah, like a proper little pathway for highly sensitive people, and probably for other, neurodivergent people as well.
That'll be good. It's actually a nice transition to our conclusion today, Sally. Is so obviously this podcast is for highly sensitive people, but also especially in my network for entrepreneurs, investors, developers, designers of technology. So maybe you could talk to them and say, how would you like technology to evolve in the near future or future? What would you ask them?
I love what you just said about that kind of, you'd have a specific pathway to go down, because less overwhelming, less complex, less intense. And I know for a lot of kind of, particularly advertisers, they want to lead you on to the next thing. The social world is set up to lead you on to the next thing, but just thinking about it, my kind of heart is racing. It's like, it's just overwhelming and exhausting. So if it could be a bit more human, a bit more real, there's been a study done earlier this year around what highly sensitive people get value from online, or kind of it's around advertising, but the message is the same, and they like things to be kind of simple, basic, not moving, colourful, just good to look at. It's more, they get a more positive response from that than too much busyness. And also, I posed this question in one of the groups that I'm in, just to see what other people might come up with, and similar things. Yeah, people want less competition. So it seems like it's all about geared up for how many likes you get, how the algorithm responds to you. And it takes away some of that human aspect of commenting, of connecting properly. You know, you can just stick a like on a comment rather than on a post, rather than actually starting up a conversation. So having some consistency as well. We don't like it when things are changed, rather than like when you go in the supermarket and they've moved everything around. It's like, what have you done that for? It's the same online. Keep things simple, continuous, consistent. And I think basically it's having more options for genuine connections. Less is more, and more human. If that is possible, that's what I think. I speak for a few HSPs, and the research suggests that we'd like that.
Thank you so much. I will carefully re-listen again and again to every single point you made, because I think they're all very very important for designers of technology. That simplicity definitely comes back quite recurrently.
And reducing the distractions. So pop-ups were mentioned, which I know I'm guilty of on my website, but pop-ups can be a big distraction. It's like you come on the thing, like you said, you've come on the thing to do something, and then this pop-up jumps up and you're like...
This is such a big monster to fight, it seems. I'm sorry to use this metaphor, but I mean, a lot of companies are fighting for our attention, and the longer we stay, the longer they, the more they can sell ads or
this is true.
Attention. So it's counterintuitive for them to tell us, okay, you're coming here, you just do that, and then you're out. Like a shop who was, for selling cakes. You just come, you buy your cake, and you're out. There's no reason for you to
what they might
staring at other cakes. So it's
but they might then get the loyalty of those highly sensitive people, and we do make up a third of the population, so that's a lot of people. Exactly. If you're kind of just putting your honest kind of, it's an honest experience, there's some human aspect to it, they're going to come back and buy more cakes.
I mean, and with today's technology, I'm sure they could even detect that the person is highly sensitive by the way they interact, by the way they could even take proactive actions to be, okay, this person is highly sensitive, then to make sure that person has a good experience with my platform.
Perhaps there could even be like a little option at the start of, would you like this to be this kind of experience, or would you prefer more of this?
I mean, what I was saying is that even nowadays they would know it without you saying it, just by the way you scroll, by the type of things you react to, by the type of things you do. So reflecting on what you say, I believe it's they could adapt the experience that we're all having and cater specifically to highly sensitive. Try to avoid showing things that trigger too much emotion, like although I was discussing this the other day with someone else, and it's a bit controversial because we don't want to hide suffering in the world, but for highly sensitive people, constantly looking at it or finding out that they're suffering here, suffering there, is emotionally draining. And I don't have a good solution right now, because we don't want, I'm not saying let's not talk about suffering. Of course, we need to talk about it and evolve as a society, but draining it is.
Because we absorb that as well. It's that kind of empathic side of us, but perhaps the balance. I know we the good news isn't such a great news story, is it? But
exactly.
we need to find some balance somehow, I think.
Thank you so much, Sally. This was a very pleasant conversation again. Maybe just to close this episode, do you mind sharing with us, reminding us what is your mission with Sally Conway Psychology, and perhaps how they can reach out to you?
Yeah. So Sally Conway Psychology is actually my therapy practice, and I also have a Highly Sensitive Psychologist, which is my coaching kind of business. So you can get me both of those kind of places, but I am mostly on LinkedIn. As I've said, you can find me at Dr. Sally Conway, Highly Sensitive Psychologist, or you can check out my website, which is highlysensitivepsychologist.com. They're the best places to find me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that conversation. It was too short, but hopefully it was already the beginning of a longer conversation that we all need to have, especially in the technology field. We need to move towards a more inclusive digital world. So thank you so much for sharing everything this world. And yeah, I hope we can talk again and maybe have another episode someday about something else still linked to
I love that. Thank you so much for having me on, and just have been able to chat with you again. It's been great. I've really actually enjoyed it, even though I was pretty nervous as a sensitive person.
Yeah.